Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Now, of course, the big event of the week is Putin in China. It has been compared to Nixon's trip to China in 1972, but of course it's turning the tables because this time it's not the U.S. sealing some kind of informal alliance with China against the Soviets. It's Russia is reasserting its close relation with China. And of course, what the other thing we're getting out of this is the rollback of the Sino-Soviet split. Sino-Soviet split was already evident in the late 1950s. It's more than half a century ago. It's 55 plus years with this the kinds of ideological conflicts that Mao in particular unleashed, right? Mao showing what a tremendous asset for imperialism Comrade Mao was, right, with his various wrecking and splitting activities. So what do we have? A deal by which Russia will deliver $400 billion worth of natural gas over 30 years. Now let me stress, this is not the only thing. There is already oil flowing through pipelines from Siberia to China, and the original estimate was that there were about 50 separate economic accords, arrangements, business partnerships, deals, whatever you want to call it. All of that was on the agenda of Putin's visit to Beijing. But this is the direction of human progress. It cannot be stressed enough. The creation of modern infrastructure, and in particular the creation of modern energy infrastructure, is the royal road of human progress in our time. And it means at the same time that if you're with Grillo, right, if you're saying no to great projects of any kind, or if your main issue in life is to block the Keystone Pipeline, you are headed for the dustbin of history. And I'm sorry, but the main problem of the world is that the infrastructure of the planet has been sorely neglected, especially because of the distortions of World War II and the Cold War. There's a huge infrastructure deficit worldwide, and here is an example of how to get rid of it. The estimates on the infrastructure alone, not the value of the gas now, but the value of the pipelines and other facilities, range from $55 billion to $70 billion. And this refers to pipeline facilities on the Russian side of the border, which will be built by Russia, and on the Chinese side of the border, which will be built by China. And some of it involves the liquefaction of natural gas at the Russian port, Vladivostok, in the Far East. Now look at the U.S. Look at the contemptible impotence of the United States, unable to build even this little Keystone Pipeline, which is a tiny little thing by comparison to this. What it shows is that if you're a radical environmentalist, if you believe that economic development has to stop, if your notion of the future is a return to hunting and gathering society or autogestion, right? If you want to go the Richard Wolff route, right? That the answer is that there should be tiny, self-governing, impotent, squabbling little entities trying to cultivate their own particularism. You are headed towards the dustbin of history. You're going to be ethnographic material. And this is, I think, an interesting aspect to this entire thing. What does humanity want and need? Well, it looks like Russia and China think that it means that humanity needs modern energy infrastructure. And of course, if you're green, suppose you're green, right? $70 billion of pipeline. Oh, that's terrible, what the green fanatic would say. The grillino or the Keystone Pipeline or whatever it is. But at the same time, you look at those Chinese cities. China made a decision back in the 1980s. I think it was called the Quadruple Plan at the time. The Quadruple Plan was go with coal. And one of the problems that meant was that the Chinese railroad system already in the 1980s was being severely taxed by the need to move all that coal. So if you're providing natural gas, that's obviously much better from the CO2 point of view. And it certainly is the case that the pollution in the Chinese cities has gone too far, right? This is excessive, right? There's no need for this. And therefore, here's the remedy. The remedy is not to shut things down, let people starve, and go back to hunting and gathering. That would not be feasible in China or anywhere else. And then I just have to insert here this question of Modi. People are writing me saying, what do I think of Modi? I don't know. You tell me about Modi. All I can tell you, as I said last week, is people who voted for Modi were expressing their desires, and these we can see, right? Development, infrastructure, modern energy, roads, railroads, the entire program of rational science and technology in the form of modernization. So that's we'll have to see what Modi does, right? Of course, Modi brings it in a kind of a right-wing, pro-business BJP package with this unfortunate anti-Muslim edge, right? The fact that Modi doesn't seem to have a single Muslim elected anywhere in his party, not even a token. That's a very bad sign in a country with a huge Muslim minority like India. But again, I can't read Modi's mind. Maybe people who know more can tell me. But what we can say is the Indian voter is telling us what they want, right? Infrastructure, modern production, modern energy, modern transportation, and deal with the environment in that context. In other words, what we're seeing with this China and Russia deal, that's what human progress will look like. It'll be big. It will be high-tech. It will be modern. It will not be small communities of local basket weavers with their hunting and gathering focus. Now, the U.S., the Anglo-Americans, right? The geopolitical response. There's a broad range of responses. There was also this week the international conference in Beijing on security matters, right? So this also shows us where they're going, right? That this is a certain amount of coordination. So what's the U.S. response? Well, it's interesting to note that according to some reports, there had been some very cordial talks about 10 days earlier between General Dempsey, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff here in the Pentagon. General Dempsey and other Pentagon people had just gotten finished hosting a top general from the People's Liberation Army, and this was sort of suggesting that it might be possible to at least get some relaxation of tensions in the Far East. But very soon after that, we've now got the indictment of these four or five Chinese hackers. All right, so look, on the Chinese hackers, we know that the Chinese do the hacking, no doubt. We know that everybody does the hacking, don't we? We know the NSA does it. We know the Chinese do it. The fact that somebody decided to pull this out right now is obviously a desire to torpedo whatever progress Dempsey had made with these Chinese generals at the Pentagon a week or two before. So we'll have more in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. The general idea of Putin and China. Look at the way in which economic cooperation and progress is envisioned. In the West, it's free trade, right? Trans-Pacific Partnership, U.S., European Union free trade sellout and all this stuff. When you're serious about development, it looks like Putin and Xi. It looks like the $400 billion over 30 years, right? $13 billion a year of gas, but up front, $55 billion to $70 billion in pipelines and other infrastructure. So what you need is infrastructure and trade deals done government to government, not free trade where the corporations dictate to the government and crush labor and indeed environmental concerns, which are real enough, provided they're properly understood. So not free trade, but infrastructure. That's what this is showing us. This is where you get somewhere, right? And this, of course, means a tremendous increase in the power of Russia and China and the attractiveness of this model to many countries, to Iran, to Turkey, to all sorts of places, right? The neoliberal model is breaking up. So we're getting the breakup of unipolar NATO world domination, and at the same time, we're getting the breakup of the neoliberal free trade consensus, because these are government-sponsored deals, right? These involve companies, but they're virtually state companies, I think, on both sides. And the other aspect is the financing, right? Where the financing, we're not told very much about it. We're not told what the price is. The speculation was, Russia sells natural gas to Europe for $380 per unit, and are they only getting $350 per unit from the Chinese? Well, of course, there's always the principle of quantity buying, and if you're committing yourself to $13 or $14 billion a year over 30 years, then you're going to get significant discounts. So what it does, it introduces a level of long-term stability, predictability, and that has cash value. So there we go with that. So immediately, same week, indictments for, again, the indictments I would suspect are well justified. But of course, once you get into this, you realize everybody does it, and the question becomes, why now? Remember when we had Medvedev here for the Hamburger Summit, right? Whatever Medvedev was, that was one of the most normal U.S.-Russian summits in many years, right? Back when was that? 2010, 2011. And immediately after that, we had Anna Chapman, the Russian Mata Hari, exposed. So you get the idea, right? That this was them, right? The neocons. What do you want to call it? The warmongers, the war party, perhaps, if you want. So the war party, the warmongers, have decided to lash out with these Chinese hacker indictments. And second point, the explosion in Urumqi, China, right? Xinjiang province, Chinese, Turkestan, northwest China, killing 40 or 50 people. Now, who could do that? Well, I don't know, but I know who I would ask. I would ask Rabia Kadir of the World Uyghur Conference. I would ask what she knows about that. That's where I would start. You've also had riots in Vietnam because the Chinese have plots an oil rig in some areas that Vietnam claimed. And you've also got what's going on in Thailand. And I would see Thailand as part of the string of pearls. In other words, China wants very much to have pro-Chinese governments on that critical route across the Indian Ocean. So this applies to Thailand, it applies to Sri Lanka, to India, to essentially all the coasts of the Indian Ocean, because this is another lifeline. Naturally, the effect of the Russian-Chinese natural gas deal is to give China and indeed Russia a guaranteed avenue of peaceful commerce, which is not, repeat, not subject to the influence of the Anglo-American Dutch naval supremacy, right?